Okay, there you go. So, Joe, good to see you. Yeah, yeah, that would be very un-Jewish of me, but it's all right. 7:18, so we're still not. We're starting on time in terms of Jewish time. Yeah. So again, my friends, we left off in the middle of a topic. We were talking about a lot of interesting questions related to the erasure of, if that's the correct pronunciation, of God's or destruction of God's name. Now, what we're going to reach tonight is, welcome, Marcia, is a very iconic response of Moshe Feinstein. And again, I welcome you, those who want to just listen. Oh, Sandy, welcome back from Prague. Okay. Welcome back from Prague. Yeah, see any golems while you were there? He was on vacation? Oh.
Remains are some.
Oh, okay. I see here. I was just. I'm just gonna do a mute because I don't know where it's coming from, but okay. There we go. All right. Don't know what that was, but it's been dealt with. So, okay. So here's the question we're dealing with now. And those who just want to follow along in the sheet, what we're looking at is on page 3, Zion. Every now and then, I just like paying attention to who are the different people involved. Sometimes the questions that are asked for Moshe Feinstein is by Joe Pulpit. Sorry, I usually use Joe. Sorry, Joe, if Joe was on there. He doesn't like when we use Joe as just a filler, as Ploni Almoni. But random pulpit rabbi somewhere. What? Irving. Irving works also. So random Irving or something. Actually, there's a number of chuvos that are written to Scranton, Pennsylvania. Quite a number of them, actually. But I am yet to find anything addressed to Allentown in Igros Moshe. But Rabbi Wiener, am I allowed to share your discovery? But Rabbi Wiener showed me that there is indeed a chuva from Rav Cook to Allentown, Pennsylvania. And let's just say he didn't have... Who was the rabbi at the time? Ah, but wait, when I read that tshuva, it sounded like there was no rabbi at the time because he was saying how there's no rabbi at the time, and then they decided to go have a funeral and Seged Yom Tov, and everyone drove over to the funeral. And okay, you know what? This is why the next guest we'll be having on Shoot First, Ask Questions Later will be Rabbi Alan Wiener, who will elucidate the tshuva for us. All right, it's it's like with Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't want the job. That's what made him the best man for the job. So okay, well, I'll rope you in one day on that one. Anyway, so the shola here actually is Rav Yitzchak Hutner, who was a major 20th century Jewish thinker in America, and then another rabbi who got involved in this was. We'll see in Osches. I didn't put the whole tshuva there, but just the title, the front matter is Rabbi Mordechai Gifter. Who also got involved. So a lot of the Lithuanian Russian yeshiva were going at. Now, what was the question? It's a sad but rather fascinating scenario. Let's say somebody has a disease that requires them to be hospitalized, and because this hospital deals with contagious diseases, their policy is anything coming in, any property coming in, cannot go out. It'll be incinerated. So the question is, can we send in this gentleman's tefillin so that way he'll be able to have it during his stay here at the hospital? So let me put it to you before I tell you. Now you can imagine, since there are those who argue with Rav Moshe, there's clearly merit to both sides of the debate. But and there's not just chuvos on it in the first volume of Igros Moshe, but then I noticed there's follow-ups, and I think in the maybe it was in volume 4 or volume 2, but there's a number of follow-ups that come later as well. So what would you say? There's a gentleman who's poor guy, terrible disease. He's got nothing with him. He wants his tefillin, but the tefillin are going to have to be incinerated. There's no question about it. So are we allowed to provide tefillin to this gentleman in the hospital?
Is it possible to put them in a sterile
That's exactly what I was
package?
So this is what we call in in certain lingo, it's called a kasha on a maisa, a question on a story, right? So we're just assuming for the purpose of this scenario that there is no such workaround. Could a workaround be achieved? It's possible, but it seemed that the hospital had a strict anything that comes in other than the human being itself, incinerated policy. So yeah.
that and use those, they're gonna be destroyed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're also already, then they're,
So okay, so are we talking about you're saying something that's nearly at the point of no longer being usable, but not quite disqualified yet. So that would certainly, I'd say, mitigate the issue. I mean, definitely, it'd be a shame for a new pair of tefillin that has a lot of mileage to go on it. But it's not just simply a mileage question. There's an actual prohibition to cause God's name to be destroyed. So even if it's a tefillin that's been, has a lot of wear and tear and a lot of mileage on it, if it's still intact and still has God's name on it and psukim, so we bury it. And there's certain, and by the way, for Sifrei Torah, Tefillin Mezuzahs, there's actually, higher standards for how we have to go about the burial as well. But it destroys. So you're asking a question, what does destroyed mean? So one of the sources that comes up in this discussion, it's a Gemara in Makos, and it comes up in a number of places in the Gemara, if I remember correctly, that basically, don't ask me how this works, but when David HaMelech, when King David was building the foundations of the temple, he didn't get to build the temple, his son did, but I guess he figured he'd set him up with the assist. The deep waters began to rise up and threaten to flood the entire world. So to make a long story short, Achitophel advises him that you could take the name of God, put it on a shard, throw it into the water, and then the water will go back down. We covered this in the Dvar Mitzvah recently, Lee. I see you nodding over there. So what's the proof? The proof is that in the case of a sota, where there's a woman who's being not convicted, but accused of an infidelity, to determine if she's convicted or not, we make her drink this special water that has God's name erased into it. So there's a kal v'chomer. I don't have a good translation for kal v'chomer. A fortiori is how it's always translated, but I don't think the Latin helps. It's like when we talk about tefillin and you want to translate for someone and you say phylacteries. They're like, phylacteries. Now I know what you're talking about, right? So there's certain things that just don't have a good translation, but it's certainly, it stands to reason that if the name could be erased to preserve a marriage, certainly God's name could be erased to preserve the world. That's a kal v'chomer right there. So that's what the Gemara says.
but if you save one life, you save the world.
That's right. So then you have to ask yourself, how do I do all the mathematics over there? Right. So I think we would agree. I don't know what the scenario would be somehow, but if there was a gun put to someone's head and says, burn this pair of tefillin, otherwise I'm going to shoot this guy, then yes, that could technically be grounds for burning the tefillin, possibly. But here, you're not necessarily, I know one can make arguments about mental health. I don't mean to downplay that, but Lee, yeah.
Two things. One is.
Oh, sorry, I'll start with that.
Sorry. First.
We'll get to both of you. It's okay.
Yeah. If let's say it's his film, and he's going to be in the hospital for a certain period of time. This isn't something he's going to be for a while, because if he's going to be in for a week, and everything gets incinerated, wouldn't it be a financial hardship to destroy tefillin only because of a week? And number two, if that's the case, then is it permitted not to wear tefillin?
Mm-hmm.
So have this. I don't want to be about money, but but you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I think there's a principle we'll get to in another class, but essentially one is not, and there's a lot of asterisks over here. I don't want to get too caught up in it, but one is not expected to spend more than a fifth of their assets on performing a mitzvah. Moshe Feinstein, on a positive mitzvah. Moshe Feinstein, a number of tshuvos, and in Dibros Moshe explains it's not literally a fifth, it just means not spending an exorbitant amount. Which I don't know, if I'm in New York, does that mean it exempts me from paying yeshiva day school tuition where it's exorbitant over there? Baruch Hashem, JDS is a very good rate. We were very happy when we saw the rates over there compared to what's being offered there. God, thank you for everyone who makes that possible. But then I think what you're getting to is the way I frame the question is it permissible to give him the tefillin? One might argue if you're allowed to, then it's not just permissible, maybe it's obligatory because he has a chiyuv to wear tefillin every single day. So there's almost, arguably, there's no middle ground. Either it's forbidden because you're destroying the tefillin in God's name of the psukim, and if that's okay somehow, then there's an obligation over here. Yeah.
Who's destroying the tefillin?
Ah, bingo. So that is so Ramosha is machmir here, or he's the one who holds it's usher. Those who are arguing against him say exactly like you're suggesting, which is, wait a minute. Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if somebody goes?
But this is, is that what you're getting to?
Yeah, what if somebody's takes the tefillin in there, he goes and he uses it while this person is there, and then that person can, I guess, theoretically take it back. Although the hospital might not wipe around on that, but.
Yeah, I think, just for purposes of the scenario, we're assuming that the hospitals, they're on top of this. They're not letting you get out no matter what. I mean, and also, just who knows? I mean, if it's really not, I don't know the science, but if we suspect it's really infected and it could cause other people to get sick, there is a real consideration over here. I mean, I imagine nowadays they figure out ways to disinfect things and take some Lysol wipes or something, but I don't know. I don't know how.
We had a little bit of experience.
Oh, what was it? Oh, what?
It gets burnt. Everything in the room gets burnt.
Oh, okay. Everything in the room gets burnt. Okay. So now let's see what Ramosha says over here. I'll just read for you some of the excerpts that I think are very important. Remember last time the connection is last time we left off with that when someone destroys God's name in an indirect manner, that's called a grumma. That's vocabulary term of the night is grumma. That means doing something in an indirect manner. Oh, yeah? So this is implication in Shabbos. On a biblical level, if one indirectly violates Shabbos, they have not violated it biblically, only rabbinically for most things. There is an exception to the rule, I believe, which is winnowing. Does anyone know what winnowing is? Oh, yeah. So I only find out about these things when I learn the Gemara. But basically, you take the pitchfork, you throw the wheat up, and then the wind separates the chaff from the kernels, and basically. The Gemara says, wait a minute, is that a grumma? Because you're throwing it up and then the wind does it, and so it's not all you. But the answer is that's the definition of the malacha. The definition of winnowing is to use the wind to do the malacha. But in general, indirectly violating Shabbos, at least on a biblical level, is not a problem. Now, Rav Moshe says, what about over here? This is arguably a grumma. I'm presenting the tefillin to the hospital, and then the staff will do whatever they do. They have free will. They're deciding what they want to do. Or is that true? He writes, who usher, it's forbidden to bring the tefillin in. Av im nechshav rak goreim, even if it's only causing it. Why? Talogara minafla deleka shemechuyav lahatzel. He proves it from the following precedent. We already have precedent in halachic literature that if there's a Sefer Torah or mezuzah or tefillin in a burning building, so we are obligated to save the Torah that's in the burning building or the tefillin or the mezuzah. We're supposed to save them, obviously, if we could do it without dying ourselves. So here's another kal v'chomer, if one is obligated to proactively save and salvage Kisvei Kodesh, holy writings, then kal v'chomer, it certainly stands to reason that I cannot actively put those writings in a place where they will be destroyed. I have to go so far as to actively save them. Certainly, I cannot put them in a position where they will be destroyed. So it's true, he says, even though this is technically a grumma, I'm not the one burning the tefillin. It's the hospital administration that's incinerating it. And who knows, maybe there it's indirect also. Maybe they put it down a chute and it goes into this and then to the incinerator, right? There could be all sorts of steps. Nonetheless, it's a special parameter, a special rule when it comes to holy writings that we're not allowed to even put them in a position where they will be endangered. It's a kal v'chomer because we're obligated to go out of our way to even save them from danger. So that's his argument that he makes. And then he takes it a step further. Much of the discussion that we had in the previous Chuvos was about erasing God's name. But this is the next level. Mishum de kisvei hakodesh chamurim mishem ba'alma. that we're not just talking about a one-off mention of God's name on a document. These are tefillin. There's parshios in there. There's full psukim from the Torah that are in there. And and this is a full unit of tefillin. So even though we saw in previous chuvos, like if we sent out the Hadlakas Nero set where they light the candles and it has the name of God that's on the printout for the bracha, maybe it'll get discarded. That's not a good thing either. But that's just one invocation of God's name. Here we're talking about an entire, the tefillin, both the shel rosh and the shel yad that goes on the arm. You got it twice over being burned. So there, the fact that it's an indirect might not be enough to mitigate the severity of what's happening. And so again, and he says, certainly, certainly you put in a place that a fire is going to come and burn it is forbidden. Certainly, again, if I have to go out of my way to save it, it stands to reason I can't put in a position where a fire will come and destroy it. That's his main argument that he makes.
Is the accused sort of mitigated by the fact that he is sick?
So that's the interesting thing,
Certain things you don't
Mhm.
either can't do or shouldn't do when you're ill.
Very good. So let me bring in some of the halachic parameters. It's a very good point that both of you are bringing up, because we do know in halacha that there is more leeway when somebody is sick. So I'll say two things. One is the tefillin. I mean, unless you're very mystical, the tefillin, at least on a physical level, not a metaphysical level, is not going to affect whether the person's healed or not. Now, I think there's a legitimate point to be raised. I will quickly interject over here into my own statement that the mental health of the patient is important as well. And it could very well likely be that, you hear stories about people who are very sick and then they have that sefer of Tehillim with them, or there's something and that's keeping them going through their sickness. So I would never want to underestimate the power of it. And what I would say also is that there's certain parameters of what you can and can't do for someone who's sick. There's different tiers of illness in halacha. There's something called a chola sheyesh bo sakana, who's someone who is deathly ill. That's someone you break Shabbos for. We break for almost every mitzvah in the Torah to save them. Then on the other extreme, there's something called mechush ba'ama. It's like somebody with a cold, like they feel under the weather, essentially. That usually there isn't much that you do in terms of breaking halacha for them. But then there's a category, there's other degrees in there, but the middle category is chola she'ein bo sakana. When someone is sick, but they're not in danger. Generally, the way we assess that, the litmus test, is that if they are mutal lemishkav, if they are bedridden. Now, it doesn't literally need to be that you are literally in your bed all day. What it means is that you cannot function. Then that's called a chola she'ein bo sakana. And there's a lot of literature on this, so I'm going to grossly overgeneralize. Generally speaking, rabbinical prohibitions are waived to help someone who's a chola she'ein bo sakana, someone who's ill but not in danger. But biblical prohibitions are not waived. So, for instance, asking a non-Jew on Shabbos to do something for someone who is ill but not deathly ill, that's something that could be done. Yeah.
That's kind of, you're almost leading into it, I think.
Yeah.
So what if you, as that ill patient in that hospital, ask someone who's not Jewish to buy you a set of tefillin, and they get it to you? Does that kind of wiggling around some things here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. How far do we take Amir La'akum? Do we take the prohibition of asking non-Jews to do something for us outside the realm of Shabbos? But it's interesting. I wonder if that would still, on the one hand, it's different than what we call a grama. A grama is my action, but it's an indirect action. Here, we have a principle in halacha called ein shliach ledvar avera. There's no such thing as having usually I can appoint an agent to do something that's a mitzvah for me. No, because no, so but that's actually, as I'm sure you're aware, that's actually one of the prime examples that there's certain mitzvos that are performed with our guf, with our body, and that we cannot outsource. So I can't just hire somebody to wear tefillin on my behalf, and that way I don't have to wear tefillin. What?
You can hire somebody else.
I don't see why not.
Well, you can't rap. So my father, towards the end, had his
Yeah.
Nepalese fellow would help him rap to film.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, the point is, it's the hanacha that goes on, and then you make the bracha on it. I think it should be. I guess. Oh, you're trying to like get into the, it's like I don't know. It's like there's a similar question about lighting the menorah. Is the mitzvah of the menorah the lighting of the menorah, or is it the placement of the lit menorah? So you're saying if you're not doing the hanacha of the placing on there, it's an interesting point. But did I address the questions that were raised? I feel like there were a lot of good questions raised. I just don't know if I actually addressed them or not. Was there anything I left? Did I get the? Oh, yeah. So I think Amy, you were asking about him being ill, if that was a dispensation or not, right?
Yeah.
So the answer I guess I would give is that the destruction of the tefillin is a biblical violation. So unless it could be really, there's some concrete proof, which I don't think there is, that giving the tefillin is actually going to save this guy's life. But it's funny. I could see somebody who might be more mystically inclined saying that this is the spiritual medicine that will heal him. I could see an argument like that being made. One of the classes we will do at some point is Rabbi Moshe Feinstein's approach to mysticism in the halachic process. He mostly was opposed. He did actually study Kabbalah, but he was opposed to incorporating it for the most part into the halachic system. He actually distinguishes between what he would consider more ancient Kabbalah versus Lurianic Kabbalah, which is the Arizal and later, which only cropped up, a few hundred years ago or so. But even then, it still has a vote, but not a veto in the halachic process. This is in contradistinction to Hasidisha and many Sephardic authorities who did incorporate mysticism more into the halachic process. So the opinions against him, I think we're arguing. I have to look back because this is very, very long pieces, and this is only a side tshuva. But my understanding was that they were looking at that piece in the Talmud over there about how David Hamel, King David, was able to take a shard with God's name on it, throw it into the water, and then it dissolved on its own in there. So that was a proof. So they said, oh, well, we see that for God's name to be erased in an indirect fashion would not be problematic. So that's one of the things that they look at as their proof.
And how would that change today?
Well, I know that. Do they still do? Is there any hospitals that they have this policy anymore that they will incinerate everything? What?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so then it's. I guess it just depends on the hospital then. So that's the
On the illness too.
On the illness.
on the illness, right.
It's
So-
a general practice.
It's a
with
general practice.
hospitals. Yeah, general practice for hospitals to burn all items that
I guess it
may.
depends what reason you're admitted. If you're having a baby, then they don't burn everything.
Oh, no,
I'm saying like they let us take all of our stuff out of there. Thank God. They let us take
anything that may carry a parasite or anything pertaining to surgery, all that stuff. If it's not recyclable, it goes into fire.
Okay, so that makes sense. So, all right, it's still practiced.
Should the person be exempt from the mitzvah?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a principle called ones rachmana patre, that when one is in a position that they can't do otherwise, God exempts them. So if it's prohibited to burn the tefillin, and that means there's no other way to get the tefillin, so we apply a principle called ones rachmana patre. Now, an ones is a certain category in halacha. An ones means that the example is if you give me your phone to watch for you, and I'm walking and I do everything the right way, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, it was a sunny day, lightning comes out of the sky, strikes the phone and explodes, and somehow I survive also. So that's called an ones. It's something that's completely unforeseeable, out of my control. So this is something that's out of one's control. The thing is, some people like to extend that to inconveniences, saying, it's hard for me to do this mitzvah or that mitzvah. Only start patri. So there's obviously parameters to that. But there's one more piece to the tshuva, and this is where this is, I think, the part where Rav Moshe Feinstein's his brilliance really shines through. Is that I could boil down a lot of this discussion to being, well, can you do is it called indirect action or not indirect action to give it to the hotel? So, all right, good discussion. These are things that, I could have thought of myself. Anyone could have thought of themselves pretty much. But here's where I think it gets really interesting. Right at the end of this piece, for those who want to look inside, it's on page 4, looking at the first paragraph here. He says two things that are noteworthy. Va'od, ani omer. Shalahavi shamhu k'ma'avid biyadam mamish v'lo rak garm ba'ama. He makes a remarkable assertion that to actually hand over the tefillin to an institution that's going to burn it, that's not called an indirect action. The fact is that when it passes the threshold of this institution, it is already condemned to incineration. So that, by me putting it in there, already condemns it. And then he kind of builds on this idea. He adds a further point. In the laws of Shabbos, right? We've been comparing this to laws of Shabbos a lot. So in the laws of Shabbos, if I hit a row of dominoes and the dominoes do that whole, right? Ever watch one of those videos and hits that thing, and then that thing sets the water, and then the airplane flies, which then eventually hits that thing all the way at the end. It's really cool. So if you ever see those kind of videos, I don't know, it takes them like hours probably to put that together, and they have to clean it all up. I don't want to think about it even. It feels very stressful thinking about that, if you know what I'm referring to. So there, when have I transgressed the laws of Shabbos? When the last domino, arguably, when the last domino finally hits the igniter and ignites the flame, arguably that's when it occurs. But when it comes to Kisvei Kodesh, when it comes to protecting our Sifrei Torah, our Tefillin, our mezuzahs, oh, Jonathan Powers is joining. Did I let him in? I hope I let him in, didn't just kick him out. That wouldn't bode well for me. Oh, there he is. He's still floating in Bein Hashmasha space. He's still in the twilight zone. There you go. Okay, we let him in. Oh, Jonathan, I like it. It says tefillah on your on his picture. Very nice, very from. Oh, that's a Sons of Israel advertisement I see for tefillah. Very good. Okay, so anyway, so this is what he says. When it comes to here, shakol. This is the underline. Shakol ibud v'chesaron shmira aser. What's the mitzvah? It's not simply that there's a prohibition to incinerate Kisvei Kodesh. It's that I have an obligation to guard the Kisvei Kodesh. I have to guard these holy writings. And the moment that I submit these sacred writings to this institution, I have been derelict in fulfilling my obligation to safeguard these holy documents. L'chein, yesh lasor, af ba'obshiyem mutter achar kach litzarv. Even though he says, yes, once the tefillin are in there, arguably they have to be incinerated because it will be a medical danger. Once it's in there. But who said I was allowed to submit it there in the first place? I did not violate. I don't trip over the wire of violating the Torah later on when it gets incinerated down the line. From the moment I submit it to the institution, to the hospital, I have been negligent in my fulfillment of my responsibility to watch it. At this moment. And that's what makes it different in Hilchos Shabbos. Maybe in Hilchos Shabbos, laws of Shabbos, an indirect action only if it happens later on. But let's just say, like, even, and the example he gives is, let's just say somehow the tefillin, I don't know, it gets lost in a closet somewhere, gets covered by all these different scrubs, and it's never to be found again until Mashiach comes. So right, imagine I would still have nonetheless been in violation of the Torah, because even if it doesn't get burned in the end, by me putting it in that position, I've already violated the Torah. So that's his argument against submitting the tefillin to the institution. I just thought it was, I read you a little short excerpt over here, but I don't know if you ever see like yeshiva guys when they learn, they take the thumbs and they go like this, and they go, or if not, that's what they do. I don't know why, but it's like a thing that they do a thumb dip when there's a really great explanation. This distinction that he makes, what?
Put a plug in your thumb and pull out a plum.
I never heard that, but I like it. Is that a thing?
It's a kid's nursery
Yeah, it's
rhyme.
part of a nursery rhyme.
Maybe that's, I don't know, some cultural diffusion going on over here. It could be. So anyway, that was the main shuva. Oh, and now let me piggyback off this for a moment because the next shuva we're going to really appreciate. This is Ostes. In the next shuva, this is about a different topic. If you look, it's those who want to check it out. Look at the bottom page 4, Ostes on the bottom right. Look in the italics. The first two words, specifre. Anyone know the next word?
Missionary.
Yeah, and that is in English? Missionaries. Yeah, very good. The missionarin. So let's say I find, this is a question. Sometimes we find mail to us, or we had, for some reason, our apartment always got all this missionary material. So the issue is sometimes they'll send you like a Bible or something in there, or they'll send you writings that cites psukim, so to speak, in there, or arguably, like, let's raise the stakes a little bit. What if I'm in Israel where everything's in Hebrew and I get something that is, something that'd be considered heretical, but it has all the psukim that are cited in it, right? Something that's like, I don't know, talking about, Bible criticism and how the Torah has 4 authors, whatever. Like think about like the quintessential form of heresy. So, but it's all in Hebrew and all the psukim in there are in Hebrew. So what am I supposed to do? So he writes, remember how we just had this whole entire not fuss, but this whole entire concern about burning holy documents? Now, in a case of heretical documents, he writes, look, and this is the second to last paragraph on the page, Sarich lisrov kol hasefer. One needs to incinerate the entire book shalhem. Even though one is going to be incinerating verses from the Torah and the name of God, Dari Nimsa Shahasrefa Adaraba who he says, on the contrary, burning it would be the most respectful thing to do to save the psukim from being surrounded by all of this heretical material that is around it. He says, on the contrary, it is a kavod. One is honoring the psukim in such a respect. I just found they're not printed next to each other in the actually they're not printed next to each other in different volumes of Igros Moshe, but I put them next to each other on the sheet just to show you the remarkable contrast. That here we were doing everything we could to avoid, God forbid, burning psukim and entire tefillin, and then but if they're surrounded by heretical material, then burning them is actually honoring them in that moment because we're saving them from having bad neighbors. Yes.
So part of the question. We can't bring in the tefillin because we didn't have plenty. But what if it was a siddur l'chumash? Same concept?
So this is interesting. Let's go back to the tshuva, Os Zion, where he says Mishum de Chisvei Hakodesh Chamur Mishem Me'alma. So he says Kisvei Hakodesh. Now Kisvei Hakodesh, I think here he means actual Sifrei Torah, actual tefillin, and actual mezuzahs, because they have a certain special status. But a siddur, while it would require geniza, it would require burial, it's not the same level as an actual Torah, tefillin, mezuzahs. What?
You're referring to the handwritten Torah.
Yeah, I mean like a kosher sefer Torah that we could use for reading. Exactly. Though there is actually, just randomly, I'll just share with you. There's a posting named Rabbi Abadi. He was in Lakewood, and they kind of kicked him out of there because he had too many novel halachic positions that they did not like. One of them, I believe, was that he said that you could write a sefer Torah. I might be botching this a little bit, essentially with stencils. So meaning the idea is it needs koach gavra, and one needs to apply human touch to it. But why can't I just make a stencil essentially, and then I could just fill it in, and there you go. And I think he basically, he may have been more elaborate than that. He also has a position, this is going to take us, this is a little bit wonky. If you never heard of it, you're going to think this is really weird. It's a little weird, honestly. But basically, there's something called, I'm going to take us down a hole. Okay, I'm going to say it. If you're interested in more information on it, let me know, but it'll take us to the rest of the class. There's something called Dam Basulim, which means on the first night of marriage, technically, if the woman still is a full virgin, didn't have premarital sex, still has everything intact and everything, so then the man and wife are supposed to actually separate from each other after the first night because there's blood. So that's like it's similar to a nida. So then she'd have to basically count everything in order to go to the mikvah. Essentially, Rav Abadi noted that this is kind of not doable for most people because here they are waiting till the wedding and then they have to separate afterwards, and then she's probably going to get her period anyway, and then she'll have to go to the mikvah again after that whole crazy thing. So he basically came out with this remarkable tshuva in which, after all is said and done, he virtually does away with the entire enactment of Dam B'Sulam. A lot of people in Lakewood were not happy about that either, is my understanding. But
my friends, and well, very Haredi, in Israel, right after the wedding night, they have a young kid come over and he stays for a few days.
So
He's a
depend.
voluntary chaperone.
So let me explain when that's happening. That is when there's a chuppahs nida, when the woman. Generally, what we try to do is, I don't do the kala classes. I generally don't do chasa classes, but I will upon request. So the woman who's getting married, the bride, they'll generally, if she's not already, because many women take birth control just to regulate hormones, my understanding. But they'll basically advise her to get onto the birth control pills to regulate her hormones. That way, she knows that she will not have her period before the wedding, and that way they'll be permissible to each other. But for whatever reason, they botched things up, and she's a nida, and so she can't be intimate with her husband on the wedding night itself. So then they need to find her.
No, this is the day after.
Right.
Kid comes over and stays until the fourth day when she goes to the mikvah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, maybe some are makbid for it, but certainly if they've already been together, that's technically not.
So they shouldn't be together till the fourth day.
Well, what happens is, you
You're talking
have
about
to
the
do.
first time?
You need to ship into Kiyam. As I said, this is going to take. This is worthy of its own share. I didn't mean. That's why I wasn't sure if I should go. It opens up more questions than answers. Yes, Lee.
You mentioned that you should not just, you should stop and support it. If it's within a radical circle, like let's say it's Jews, and it's like equal. You're supposed to destroy it, correct?
Yeah.
Now, if you bring it for Shaimos, is that a Avera? Because some people just don't have you're destroying God's name. So
Yeah.
I'm saying, you know what, I know I'm not supposed to have this. I just want to bring it to Shaimos, just put it away. Is that?
So that's the issue, right? Because if you're putting it together with actual Shamus, then actual holy writings that are not compromised, then you're degrading the dignity of the Shamus that's in there. So, I mean, arguably what you could do is put it in a separate kind of bag, and then it's separated from it. That's a way to do it. But actually, one last little tidbit, over here. He writes, this is on page 5 in the bold. Ubeim nidvesu perushe harishaim yachad imatanach. So, it was very fun actually. I had Rabbi Liebtag Menachem Liebtag, who's a big Tanakh scholar. He was scholar in residence at my previous shul in Connecticut on Shavuos. The ironic part is that he didn't get any of the between Mincha Marav slots, but those happen to be the most well attended slots because just like the between, at the end of Yontif and, between the dates of Yontif. So I wound up speaking one of the slots, and then I was teaching one of the Igros Moshe Shirim about, can you make a CM? We did this one together. Can we do a CM on books of Tanakh? So here I was telling him, I cited Ramosha in there, who says that if you learn with Perushi Harishayim, with the commentary of the wicked, then it doesn't count. Now, when we think wicked people, might think about like murderers and vandalizers, whatnot. He means like, heretical Perushim, or people who don't subscribe to the classical Rishonim. So I said to Rabbi Liebtang, I don't know what they think about the Kohen land of Israel Chumash or something like that. Maybe that's what he has in mind. But anyway, he says if there are these, I don't know if he, was I don't know when Milgram published his book on Vayikra, but anyway, so he says if somehow you can kind of take a saw and like the Tanakh is on top, the commentary is on the bottom, and just saw the book so that you separate the psukim from the commentary. Then the psukim could go in Shaimos, and then the commentary can go into the fires of hell or whatever. So that's what he writes. I don't know how viable that is. And then you also have to figure out what's considered Perushe Harishayim. So are we, is someone reading like the church fathers, or are we talking about, James Kugel, or, so it depends. He would say yes. Yeah.
That gives you the Bible.
It's not yours. Don't touch. Just leave it. Don't vandalize their property, please. It's their Bible. Don't assume ownership over it, and then you don't have to worry about it.
In between things, the Bible that has the Hamanah has the
Old Testament.
Yeah.
that was the only copy I had.
Oh. Yeah. So I guess read the Old Testament then. I guess if that's all you got. I mean, look. Better than nothing, probably.
And you certainly can tear it up because it's not horizontal, it's
Yeah.
a vertical.
So the History Channel about 10 or so years ago had this great mini series about the Bible, and there was like 5 episodes from the Old Testament, I put in quotation marks, and the New Testament. So it was pretty cool actually. They took some literary license with it. But then I continued to watch the next 5 episodes. So I got a little bit of a Bakias in the New Testament that way, and some of the main stories from there. I can't say now I'm an expert in it, but I know some of the stories from there now.
Yeah, one of the problems though with the having the translation isn't always correct.
Correct.
They maneuver the translation to fit their theology.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think I forgot who said this, but there's a saying that every translation is an interpretation. It's a commentary. That's it. Every translation is a commentary.
When the art scrolls when it first came out, I remember there were a lot of people who were very upset because it was not a literal. I remember a lot of grief.
So this is my unpopular opinion. So everyone complains about this when it comes to Shir Shirim, the Song of Songs, because there's very explicit sexual material in there. But I say there's enough literal translations out there. I'm just so glad that Art Scrolls saved me the trouble of having to read through Rashi separately. I can just see their translation and then they incorporate Rashi in there. It's great. It's like it's the streamlined edition of Shir Shirim with Rashi. It's great. Anyway, we are at 8 o'clock, so I'm making good on my promise from last week. We'll end over here. So we'll hold on to these sheets for one more shear. We're done with the erasure of God's name. The next topic we will deal with is intellectual property in halakha. So we have a little bit of material on that we'll cover, God willing, this year next time. And then I need to figure out. We're away Thursday, definitely through Sunday. I think actually we're going to come back Sunday night, so we should still be back on for Monday night shear this coming week. So God willing, we'll wrap it up then. All right. Thank you all for coming, everyone, both in person and on Zoom. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Night.